You are listening to Wait a Minute with Beth and Jessica.
Episode 65. I'm Jessica Pearson, certified life coach.
And I'm Beth Barnett-Babel, integrative nutrition therapist.
We keep our eyes peeled for things in the media or in real life that come from diet culture or that perpetuate diet culture in some way. These are often the subtle ways it creeps in, which is why we're shining a light on it and sharing it with you. So, Beth, you're in Japan still. You just moved to Kyoto.
Yes, very traditional Kyoto background here.
It's very cute, very cute. So I'm just curious, what are you seeing any diet culture there? What is in the media for you? Or in your algorithm now that your IP address is somewhere else?
They're very, very, very into skin culture here, like skin care. And there's a whole skin routine that you do and evening bathing culture. But, I wouldn't classify that as diet culture per se.
Oh, wait, let's back up. Evening bathing culture. That sounds kind of amazing.
Oh, yes. So in everybody's home, they also have a small bath, and it's part of the nighttime ritual to take a bath, pre-wash off, sit on the little stool or stand in the shower. Both options have been provided to us at each place we've stayed at, plus hotels. And then there's a bathtub. There's a shower space, and then all in one little enclosed room, and then right next to it is the bathtub. And they auto-fill. You can make them, in some of the more modern houses, you can make them auto-fill and stay a certain temperature and do this whole thing. And so, yeah, you do that at night before bed, and then the women have a whole routine. So you wash with the cleansing oil to get all the goopity goop off, and then you wash with a wash, and then you put on all your lotions and potions.
I mean, this just sounds like top tier self-care. I'm a little jealous.
Yeah. So that's the main ads I get from here. And then when I go out and about, I really don't see anything per se that is it is very much a image-based culture, but I would say that what I know about South Korea is that it does feel less intense than South Korea, but I don't see things specifically tied to weight. It's about your skin looking a certain way. Everybody walks around with their umbrellas and with things to cover their hands and arms to prevent getting too much sun on your skin for skin damage, but I wouldn't say that. And then I would say that if you were an average size US woman, could be potentially challenging to shop here because the sizes tend to, particularly pants, tend to run smaller. Even so, a lot of things are oversized, but the waist size, I have not seen expanded versions of waist sizes unless you go to H&M or Zara or one of those types of stores.
Yeah, you posted a photo. You did a cooking class, and the person that was your teacher, she was very petite. And so I was like, Beth looks 6 feet tall.
Well, I will say that she was smaller than the average person around me. So, but I would say that a lot of the women are my height. They just tend to be a little bit smaller.
Is being in a new ratio, it's now that the average people are smaller than you, is that giving you any thoughts, or do you feel like you're comparing yourself against this different body size?
I don't think no, because the men are their body structure seems smaller. Right. I am a different, because of my cultural and ethnic background, my body size is a little different. My actual frame of my structure is different. And so, no. And even so, what's interesting is because the clothes are all oversized, they still look weird on me. They look great on them, but I still am drowning myself in fabric.
Oh,
but
well,
I don't know. It does seem that my guess is that if I were to talk to people about larger body sizes, there probably would be judgments there from cultural standpoint. But since I can't really communicate with anybody, I don't really know. But just kind of reading the general room.
That's interesting because it's kind of from what I've gathered, yeah, people it's not ideal to be larger, but I don't see a lot of discussion about why. Here it's just if you're fat, you're unhealthy, or, it's just like so very overt and negative where they're like, well, we don't talk about it, but this is just what we do.
Yeah, I will say I've had a couple where conversations have taken place. We went to a couple of restaurants where it was like we sat at the counter and could talk to the chef, and they had more, we had more ability to communicate. And then at our neighborhood bar that we had like in our little alleyway, they mentioned something about normally Americans that come to their restaurant are very big and eat a lot more. And so they were like sort of surprised we weren't eating more. And then I was like, yeah, our portion sizes are larger at home. So anyways, I just was like, oh, you try to just be like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so they do have a perception
How
about
we eat.
Americans. Yes, they definitely do, I would
Well, I
say.
feel like this is the perfect segue into what we're going to talk about today. So we'll just like skip other things that we had on the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
docket.
totally. Yeah.
So I feel like this is a great segue into what you shared with me that had been on your mind, which is hunger and just adjusting your own appetite to the surroundings that you're in, being that the portion size are smaller.
Yeah, I'm always curious about hunger, even at home, because it's a topic that we talk a lot about with our clients. And so it's something that has been on my mind. And we help our clients understand the hunger scale. And so what's interesting is that, when I was here, really, really noticed it because of how small the portion sizes are. And at first, I was like, wait, that's it? That's dinner? Like, we're done? And so I was just like, oh, okay. And so, but I would be like, oh, wait, but I'm actually not hungry anymore. I actually feel satisfied, and only like twice have I left a restaurant being like, oh man, I am really full, like in cases that you would do more frequently at home in a restaurant. And so I really started to notice that difference of like the norms of the portion sizes here and how I felt, and then had to like wrap my head around like, oh no, it's okay.
Were you able to accept it, or you're like, we got to stop at the 7-Eleven?
I was fine. Like, no, I was actually fine and adjusting to it. And then would have to do that. I'd always just really check in with my son, who is like voraciously eating right now, and be like, are you okay? Like, do you need more food? But
Yeah,
he
he's
just
a
gets,
growing teenage boy, and he's like, I am starving.
yeah. So that's all I have to say about like, that's really where like I just really started to like think more about
Yeah, it's not something that we
hunger.
just sit around and ponder, but hunger is just not as easy as like, I'm hungry, I'm full. It's a spectrum that's influenced by all of our senses and emotions.
Yeah, because you think about that, the sayings of my eyes were bigger than my stomach, or you may not even think about food or your hunger until you smell something delicious or smell something familiar. And so all of those things, our senses can influence whether we feel hungry or not. And then, how much we might eat, we might put on our plate because our eyes find it all so delicious looking. So we put more than we might really want to eat because of that.
Yeah. Which plays into that whole idea of like, just because you have a lot on your plate doesn't mean that you have to finish it if you get full, which is a real challenge for a lot of us, especially when you're eating something that you really love or that tastes really good, to like
Hmm.
check in and say, oh, yeah, like I thought I could eat all this, but I actually feel good about stopping right now. That seems to
Yeah.
be such a simple thing, but so many people struggle with just that connection.
Yeah, I think that's the connection part. Another thing to consider is increasing or decreasing hunger on hormone fluctuations or neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. So if you're on medications that alter those can increase or decrease your hunger. Estrogen and progesterone can increase and decrease hunger, and types of foods that your body is sensing that it needs. And so we need to like really realize that hunger is very nuanced and not just kind of make it this black or white thing like everything else.
Yeah, especially the hunger hormones, like eating when you're full or eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. Because sometimes if those hormones are disrupted, then I could have just eaten, but then 30 minutes later, I'm like feeling hungry again. And then
Yeah.
I might say, oh, you know what? Like, I have to talk myself through that type of hunger where it's like, it's okay. You're not going to die. Like, it would be okay to maybe wait another 30 minutes to check back in and see if that hunger is still there. Where I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes, we talk about like intuitive eating, people are like, just eat when you're hungry. And it's like, well, yes, but maybe not always like playing around with hunger. And
Mm-hmm.
then hunger is also, like you said, it's emotional, where some people also are afraid to feel hunger. Like it triggers some kind of nervous system reaction where they feel unsafe or nervous or anxious when they start to feel hungry. So they really try to avoid feeling hungry because it's not a safe place for them.
Right. Yeah, or
Um,
and even on that flip side of working with people when well, where does it feel comfortable and normal for you to stop at feeling full? Sometimes people are stuck at that very full feeling. Like for some people it would be
yeah.
uncomfortable, but for them that's what feels comfortable and
Yeah,
normal.
feeling overfull feels comfortable. Like it's a
Yeah.
sensation that makes you feel satisfied.
Yeah.
And
And
so
so then they feel uncomfortable being less full than
yes,
that. So then
yes.
there it drives that hunger feeling. Yeah.
Which I feel like you got a taste of that in this experience in Japan, even though it was not as extreme. You're like, well, I'm not getting as full as I'm used to.
Hmm.
So it's like, it's just a different experience.
Yeah, it's a different experience. Yes, for
What
sure.
did you say to yourself? Like, if we're talking to clients about this and we're trying to encourage them to try this, like, how did you do that in this realm where you're like, okay, it's okay. I don't need to eat more?
Yeah, well, I would be like, well, I actually don't have that physical. I know what that physical feeling of hunger feels like, even having eaten. It's like, no, I definitely did not get enough food. That my brain and my stomach are saying, nope, we need some more. So I know that feeling, which not a lot of people have. So I do have an advantage of being very in touch with that. But also, I would step back and be like, well, because you do have a moment, especially at like Amakaze, you can say, I would like to try this, or can I have a little bit more of that? Like you do get to have that opportunity. And so, but before that would happen, I would be like, well, okay, I've had da 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 da, and I actually am not having that physical feeling. So I'm going to be okay. And I can go home and there's food everywhere all around and in my house. So if I need more food, I can eat more food. I just don't need to do it all right here at this moment.
Yes. It's like the abundance mindset that I
Yeah.
talk to clients about, which no matter what their history is, wherever they're at now, they do have resources. They do have abundance. They do have food in their fridge. In their minds, they're thinking like, I got to have this food, all of it right now.
Hmm.
And I remind them like, you can eat food whenever you want, as much as you want. And when you really believe that or remind yourself of that, then it's actually easier to stop because you're not trying to like make up for something or live from a place of scarcity or lack, because you can eat anytime. And then it just feels easier to kind of let go of that attachment.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I know that people will be like, well, not everybody has that luxury.
Yeah,
That might
for
be their
sure.
only time. And I totally get that. Like 100% get that. That this situation is for a lot of people there is food scarcity and so that is
Yes,
their time, and so this conversation is not about that. This conversation,
correct.
those are two very
Yeah,
different things, and so we could talk just to that, but that would just be its own conversation. And so I
for
just kind of want
sure.
to like distinguish that I
Disclaimer.
do know the difference
Yes,
between the two.
yes, absolutely.
So,
Yes.
so anyways, that being said, it is very much like a thing that you have to be able to briefly, for me, it is briefly uncomfortable, but for some while learning, you might be uncomfortable learning these hunger and full cues for a little bit, right? But I think that that's part of the process that's retraining your brain. Like your brain neurons are used to a particular thing, and if you do something different, then it's like, wait, what's happening here? And so that's what the discomfort is, that it's not used to going on its same railroad track. You're starting to go down a new track, and the conductor is like, well, I hope this is safe. So that's some of the discomfort that somebody might sit in.
Yeah. I had a client last week that was like, I want to go for walks, but just even the idea doesn't even come into my mind. Because she was like, I don't even have like the moment to decide. So when I think about hunger, I think about people who are like, well, I'm not even like deciding if I should start or stop because it's not even occurring to me yet.
Right.
So like, what would you say to those people?
Well, then that's where it's like, well, then the first step is we have to start to build the awareness of connecting in with your plate or your bowl or whatever. And so those individuals are disconnecting, so they're not embodied with the situation. And so then we have to we'll start to notice your food, like be present with your food. And I definitely work with a lot of folks on this, is like, well, right, like before we can get to hunger, we got to step into this part, and then we build from there.
Why we often start and talk about slow eating. Because when we go slower with our food, that gives us the space and time to pay more attention to what's happening.
Yes.
With the food.
Correct. Yeah. So a lot of people find it more, for whatever reason, they want to be distracted while they're eating. They want to be watching TV or reading something or checking email or what have you. And so we ask people to set that aside for even half of the meal, because sometimes even a whole meal of that can be very uncomfortable. And so it's just like, for half the time, can you just be with your food? You can let your thoughts run wild, but every once in a while check in, and you check in with your food and your plate and your stomach and see, how are you feeling? And that's like, so that is the first place, and is actually groundbreaking.
Yeah, it is groundbreaking, even though it's so simple. But you had made a note about emotional eating and just how we eat when we're not necessarily hungry for all sorts of reasons, and that media and the TV can play a role in that, where it's like we have these connections of like, oh, I love to watch a movie and I have to have popcorn and M&Ms.
Right. Yeah. The brain is an association maker. And so if you associate TV with popcorn a couple of times and it was fun and enjoyable, then your brain's like, oh, let's keep doing that. TV, popcorn, TV, popcorn. And so then it's like, this is the thing that we do. And so then when you try to unassociate those things, you're going to have discomfort.
Yeah.
And so then when we think about celebration with X, Y, and Z, this food goes with it, because there is a positive association. Your brain's like, this is what we do, because we do things that make us feel good. And then we don't have to think about what are the things that make us feel good. It just does it automatically, which is why, you'll go to a function and you might feel uncomfortable because you're having to do the small talk nonsense that people don't like to do at functions, and there's food there. So it's like, well, let me just eat this because this feels good to my anxiety, or let me go to this family function and I eat these things even though I'm not really hungry, because those things go together. Your brain is just doing its job of associating these different emotional things with the food.
Yeah, I feel like my therapist called that coupling or something. And it's like, to uncouple is not comfortable. And I have a lot of clients where it's like, oh, you're on your way to get your kid from school and you just want to go get a snack, or on your way home from work and it's a long commute, so you got to get a snack. And, you just develop these habits that are not necessarily related to hunger. They're related to your, desire for feeling something, really. Mm-hmm. That's not boredom while you're in the car.
Yeah, and like the same thing happens, like if we were to equate it to quitting smoking, you have to uncouple some habits. So people are used to lighting up after a meal or getting in their car, doing this certain thing. And so it's like, no, you have to like change, or I have my cigarette with my coffee in the morning, and those two things just go together. And it's like, so the coffee is no longer good because I'm not doing the thing. Well, it's just because your brain is like, but we're missing something. You've changed the equation. And so that is uncomfortable, and you just have to bring some positive thoughts or emotions to it, so your brain's like, oh, this is still good. So as long as we bring some positive things into the new pathway, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
It needs that positive reinforcement to remember, because if you keep saying discomfort, 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 it's going to be difficult.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, let's back up just a hair.
Yeah.
we've gone straight into the psychology of it all, but just real quick, can you define hunger, or like at least what you think hunger is?
Yes, to me, hunger is that feeling of discomfort or weakness, like you're feeling off. And you're just like, I'm not firing on all cylinders. That is scientific term. With the desire to eat. So that's what hunger can be, is that feeling that mental or physical discomfort plus the desire to eat.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
think of it
you,
as just like a physical sensation, but if I had to describe it, it is not comfortable. So I guess it is discomfort.
yeah, it is your body's like, I need fuel. So you're
Yeah, it's like
having
a
a
little
dip.
agitating. It's
Yeah, and we
like,
want to get at like slightly, you know, that feeling, but we don't want to be ravenous or hangry. Like don't wait until then. Like that's not the time to be like, no, now I'm hungry. Well, yeah. No, you should have eaten like an hour ago. If you get to that point, you should have eaten an hour ago.
well, and a lot of people are just used to getting to the hangry point. Like that's just part of their daily structure is no
Go,
breakfast,
go, go,
just
go, go. Hangry.
coffee, and then they're hangry at like 1 o'clock, and maybe they even push it to later, and then you cannot make decisions. You just start eating whatever you can find,
Yes.
and then you have a crash around 3 or 4, and now you're looking for more sugar or caffeine to get you through the day, and that is just like literally, I would say. I mean, this is not an accurate statistic, but if you had to guess the statistic, how many clients, like what percentage of our clients do you think come to us with that pattern?
60.
I was going to say like 80.
Yeah, well, 60% of my folks come in with that pattern. I guess I had a rash of lunch eaters at some point
Oh,
in
good.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime someone's eating breakfast or lunch, I'm like, you are halfway there, sister. We are doing it.
Yeah.
Not to say that you have to have breakfast. There's no one right pattern or flow or structure to how anyone could or should be eating. And the point of this is to figure out like what does work for you. And so it's interesting too when we try to like somebody comes to us and they give us this, their pattern, and then we suggest changes, and then there's some resistance because in their mind I'm like, well, if it were working, you wouldn't be here. But all they can feel is like the discomfort of having to change. And so we have to work
Correct.
through that.
Yes. Which is celebrating,
Yes, we love discomfort.
something new.
So I think one of my favorite things I learned about hunger in our eating psychology course was this idea that each relationship with food can mirror or somehow reflect your hunger for life.
Yeah.
Because it is so complex, yet nobody really thinks to take time to reflect on maybe that. Like, I'll ask clients that. They're like, what? So but I just think your hunger and your overall desire is connected and intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is all of your desire and joy coming from food in your life? It's easy, and it's okay if it is, because that's kind of the culture that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have to do much. I can just literally sit at home and have food delivered to me and watch TV. Like, that can be all my joy and desire. I don't have to have hobbies. I don't have to do anything if I don't want to.
Right.
But it's like, is that pulling away from the expansion of my life?
Right.
So it's like, what am I missing out on? I still love food, right? But it's like not every desire or joy comes from food. You are kind of left with this space to decide like, well, how do I want to fill my time and energy? Or what do I want to spend my energy on? How do I want to create joy? Where are my desires? What do I want to do with my life? I don't know. You might go to Japan for 4 months, I don't know.
For food, by the way.
Yeah, you're like, I'm definitely eating my way through Japan. If you're not following Beth's personal account on Instagram, you should, because she's got all the ramen. I was like, you're going to come back a ramen expert. But it's not just ramen.
Expert.
You like go for bike rides and you did historical tour. Like you're doing other things.
Oh, yeah. But you have to eat in between.
Well, you'd have to eat anyway.
I have a question. So, our relationship started with food as our soul connector.
Yes.
So, and we would talk about food. We made food together. We did all of our activities outside of school and work. You and I, we would hang out around food.
Yeah, we still do.
And we still do. But there's been a shift.
Yeah.
So now we go because, it's like, oh, we got to get out of our house. So we need to go meet up somewhere. And so we pick food. But before it'd be like, okay, well, we got to try this restaurant. Like we knew every single new restaurant that was opening
Yeah.
and we could talk about the chefs and all this other stuff. Do you remember when or what that shift was when you were like, I am no longer obsessed? That's a big word, but obsessed with like,
I was obsessed. I mean, I was a self-proclaimed foodie. I had a job where my literal title was foodie.
right? Yes.
Yeah, like I was a trained chef. I'm like, I love food so much I paid $18,000 to learn how to cook. So I don't know I think what shifted is like, I think it was Brooke who asked this question. She was like, could you go to Italy and not like make a reservation? Like imagine planning a vacation, but of course she chose Italy because she knows that everyone that goes to Italy wants to eat their way through Italy, right? But like, could you go and like just not think about the food? And my initial reaction was like, get out. Like,
Why would I do that?
I'm firing you. Not my ghost. But then I like the more that I thought about it, the more I thought, oh my God, like, yeah, like what else is there? And so I just started focusing on other things like, yeah, oh yeah, I do want to get out of the house. Oh yeah, I do want to talk to Beth. And like, I haven't seen you in real life in a while. Or like, I want to connect. Like, actually, I have a birthday. It's not my birthday. It's a friend's birthday this week. And like, she picked the restaurant. And like, normally I probably would like stalk the menu or I would try to convince her to choose a specific restaurant or whatever, but I'm like, don't know, don't care. Just showing up because I know that for me, it's not about the food. It's like, I want to catch up with these women that I haven't seen in months.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly. Like, it wasn't like an official switch, but it does feel like that now in hindsight because I just don't think about it as much.
Yeah. I think for me, the switch happened when I had more things on my plate that, it just didn't feel as important. And then, not to sound like an old, curmudgeon woman, but it got to be where the places that were new and hip and interesting, it all started to be the same. It was different, but
It
the
was
same.
too much. Yeah.
And it's just like, I can only eat a fried Brussels sprout so many ways or eat a new way or,
A braised
just
short rib.
a braised short rib. And I was like, this is basically all the same thing. And the cost is getting higher and higher. It's harder and harder to get in. And then I couldn't have a conversation with anybody. So it just became so loud. And I was like, I'm eating the same food. I can't have a conversation with anybody. So can I just go to the places where everybody can get what they want to eat? I'm not spending $200 on dinner. You're wondering how you walked out having spent $200 on dinner.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be cheap, but sometimes if something is like $100 or $200, I'm like, I could have gotten a massage. Like, I think of all the other things I could have spent the money on.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm just going to poop this out. This is like really expensive poop. Which is a very privileged way to think about that. I'm just touch base back on that whole yeah.
But I think food in that way has gotten out of control. Like it has gotten too expensive for what it is. And so it's just like that. It's like something I don't want to keep supporting that culture of. I want to go back to like normal checks and I want to go back to like enjoying the people that I'm with and not to be seen in a place and be like, oh, I got the reservation and things like that. Yeah. So chasing the reservation of the new place is no longer important. I just want to talk to people. So I'll go and like when I meet up with certain people and I'm like, okay, well, this place is reliable food and I know that we get to like have a conversation. And so it's just like, I may be kind of tired of eating it, but I don't really care because I'm there for the people.
Yeah.
And then I will say that having now here, the food here is very expensive to live here, but the food is very, very cheap unless you are doing like some very specific things. Like if you're going to like a top tier sushi place, yes, that is expensive, but you don't have to do that to experience good sushi.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. If you got the reservation, I mean, I would go. I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't go. I'm not going to turn it down, but I'm not going to be the one to be like stalking the computer trying to get it or whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
So Honestly, I was just thinking there's probably another couple reasons. One is I know that I can live without it because I just tried it and I live to survive it. So there's been times where we've done like our detox program or where I've really focused on reducing sugar in my own life or reducing alcohol. I've gotten off coffee. Like I have done, and this word is so triggering, I have restricted types of foods, but not for weight loss, just for the sake of rewiring my brain and experiencing my life without this overflow of serotonin and dopamine all the time. And when I don't have that, it does balance your hormones. We know that. And it does reduce your overall cravings and urges to overeat. And when I experienced that, I was like, this isn't hard. Like I still get to eat a lot of really delicious food. I'm not depriving myself and I feel good. And this is simple. And so I think maybe just because I've experienced that, I lived to tell the tale. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like you just try something and when you do it, you're like, oh, that's not that hard. You're like, oh yeah, I don't need to go out to eat 4 times a week or whatever. You're like,
Yeah.
I can make a simple, like, I don't know, today for lunch we had soup, salad, and sandwich. And it was like leftover soup, half a sandwich that I grilled on the griddle and like simple salad.
Yeah. So your hunger in life is expanding, but it's not tied to food.
Yes. Like I want an expansive life. I want to be hungry for other things besides food.
Yeah. And I think that is a difficult switch to make. And it's not easy. So we did psychology reading, in 2018, 17?
Yeah.
So
2015.
So we're talking a lot of years here.
Almost 10 years ago. In a decade, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. It's going to be great. But no, it doesn't have to be. It's not that slow, but it's just like it's an evolution. And so people think that their hunger and all of these things have to happen yesterday, but we need to remember that it's an evolution. They are an evolution. Every part of us is an evolution. So our hunger and what we want it to be and how we want it to show up in our life is an evolution. And it's not this or that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why our work, I think, is so interesting because it is about self-discovery. It's not like, come and lose 20 pounds. It's like,
right.
There's so much more to it than just focusing on what you should or should not eat to be losing weight or to change your health.
Yeah.
Well, let's end with some action steps. Like, what are some things that people can do? How can they start paying attention to hunger?
Well, we mentioned before just checking in from time to time into your plate, right? So doing that. And then when you are getting ready to eat, there's a scale that we like to use, the hunger scale of -10 being the most hangry you've ever been to +10, the most full Thanksgiving you've ever family experience you've ever had. And 0 is somewhere in between. Like you're neither. You're not hungry, you're not full. And so when you go to eat, where are you on that scale? Are you a -8? Are you a -4? Start to notice where you might put yourself on that number scale. And then when you're done, see where you are. Like, how full are you? Like, just kind of see. Start to notice that.
And I tell people it could be like being on a bus or a train stop. Even if you don't stop at like a +2 or a +4, can you just like notice the street you're on? Like, let's just take inventory of, I don't know, what do I think a -2 or a -4 feels like? Even if I stop at or +2, +4, even if I stop at a 6 or an 8 or whatever. Just getting to notice the sensations in your body is going to help you in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then also, this is challenging because we tend to move on so quickly to something else, is check in about 10 to 15 minutes after you've finished eating and see, has your fullness changed? Sometimes we get fuller because if we ate fast, our brain didn't go along for the ride with us, with our stomach. And so then we realize, oh, wow, we are really full. But sometimes you might notice, oh, I'm just right. Or maybe I could eat a little bit more. Let me go see.
Yeah. Once you build awareness, I always tell people there's 3 phases of awareness, which I'll cover super quickly. So there's the step 1 is just noticing after the fact. So maybe you ate a meal and then it was after the fact. We're like, oh, I'm so overfull. And then step 2 would be noticing like in the moment as you're eating, you're like, oh, I'm noticing my fullness, but you're not necessarily stopping. You're just aware of the sensation of being full. And then step 3 is having the awareness and then perhaps making change in the moment. So you notice that you're feeling full, and then that's when you would stop. So a lot of times people think like step 1 or step 2 is a failure, or that they're not making progress, like especially step 2, because they're like, I see it happening in real time, but I'm not doing anything. And then they're beating themselves up for not stopping or not taking action. And I'm like, no, 2 is along the way. You're halfway there. You just got to keep noticing, and then eventually you'll get to 3. So just don't sweat it.
Yeah, because the right step hasn't presented itself on how to get out of that. But you're being aware, and so it's working on it.
If you have any questions about hunger, we would love to answer them. Just send us a DM on Instagram. If you're not following us on Instagram, please do.
Yes. So about hunger, we want to really just, final up with this statement. It's not about restriction. It's not about binging. It's not about weight control. It's just about taking that stock in about and being in touch with yourself and what's best for you, not what somebody else says you should be doing.
Yeah, it's empowerment. Because I think when you're trying a plan, or somebody tells you should eat this many calories or this many macros, or this is how much food should be on your plate, it's like you're letting somebody outside of you tell you what's right for you. But like, I don't know, my plate could look different on any given day, and I feel comfortable with that because I know what fits inside my body.
Absolutely. I sure hope we gave you something new to think about today and helped you take one more step on your path to freeing yourself from diet culture. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram at path_nutrition. We'd love to see you inside our interactive online course called Foundations, which we go over this hunger and everything involved in it so you can continue to work on this with yourself. And so go to pathnutrition.com/foundations to learn more and sign up today.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.